with Gerry Dulac's report that just came out regarding tensions running high between Russell Wilson and Arthur Smith. First, we had the Cavalli nugget where he said there was friction. They didn't see eye to eye on things. Now we have very specific storytelling from Gerry where it sounds like Arthur Smith was angry at Russ that in that great game against the Bengals, he went rogue. He went off script. He ad-libbed and improvised. And yes, they won. Yes, he played great, but that's not their version of Steelers football. Put the kibosh on it and wanted him to reel it in down the stretch and get back to their run-first mentality.
Cool. I don't think this is an Arthur Smith, Russell Wilson story, though, Pony. I just don't.
Oh, you don't say. What do you think it is then, Malsey?
I mean, Arthur Smith's taking orders from the guy who wants to run the ball more than anyone and play defense.
Is that Art or is that Mike?
I mean, it could be Art, but because Art just does what Mike wants him to do or has the same philosophy as Mike. It's a Mike and Russ story. I mean, does anybody actually think Arthur Smith, an offensive coordinator, would like to depress his offensive output, that he would see a game like the Bengals game on the road and see the way Russ turned back the clock and think, I want less of that? That's going to be the thing that gets me another head coaching job in this league. I have a lot of beachfront property in Omaha, Nebraska I can sell to you if you believe that.
I think it's possible that Art's vision for how the offense should look is very akin or very much in concert with Mike.
Yes.
So that's how he gets here in the first place, because his views align with Art and Mike. And so when somebody veers off of that, I could see him feeling that way. Independent of Mike, I don't think so. I mean, if Mike said, no, this is great, let him cook, I think Arthur backs down. So I do agree with you that he's like a proxy here in this war that took place between the quarterback and the team. But at the same time, like, I've read this story now 5 times. It's not adding up to me. 1 and 1 has given me 5. Because after this, Joe called it explosive. I wouldn't quite term it that way. But once we find out, okay, this is the inflection point, this is where it happened in this game, this is where they won, but the coaches were frustrated that somebody basically did their own thing. Coaches they work so hard during the week. They want their ideas and their opinions to matter and count. They don't like when a quarterback just, does his own thing and makes it about him. I think most coaches would actually be like that. The next part of it makes no sense. So if Russ really did this act of defiance, why would Mike Tomlin want him back? The rest of this story is about how they could still bring him back, and then it even puts a number on it. If it's Wilson, meaning if they bring back Wilson, the price tag will be a 2 or 3 year deal that averages between $20 million and $25 million. You would not pay, if this is a recalcitrant guy who just does his own thing and is not going to play by their rules, Mike's not going to give that quarterback $20 to $25 million a year.
So what do you think is the genesis? That it's Russ's people are for some reason putting out a story or getting something out that makes him look good and them look bad because they want to gas up his free agent price?
The falling out that's been laid out here is exaggerated, and the relationship is not nearly as bad as this story suggests, or the coaching backlash and the way that these two basically were oil and water the last month of the season is either blown out of proportion or it's accurate, and they have no intention of bringing him back. Why would you, we've talked about George Pickens and a lack of discipline and how the Steelers can't get him to fall in line. Russell Wilson's not a good enough quarterback where they would sign him to a pretty expensive contract and know that there's a chance He tunes them out and does whatever he wants.
Even though, to this story's reckoning, it worked.
Yeah. If they were cool with it, then they would have let him keep doing it, Chris. I mean,
what do you ultimately think is what's your takeaway?
I don't think,
like, where do you zero out on this story?
So clearly, the evidence that supports that this happened was the way they played the second Bengals game, right?
Ultra conservative.
That they did not let Russ do those things.
Correct. Which I chalked up to Tomlin at the time and after.
That Russ was neutered by the reaction he got from trying to go and do his own thing against the Bengals and was like, okay, fine. I'll back off and go along with it, I guess. And now as I'm saying this out loud, because this story just came out, like, is that now enough for the Steelers to think, okay, maybe Russ is capable of evolving and doing what we ask of him and not constantly audibling and constantly changing our plays?
I mean, no matter how you want to slice this story, I just think it comes across as yet another piece of demoralizing evidence. If you believe the very nuts and bolts that caused the rift, which was they had a very good offensive performance and he had his best game of the season for them, and subsequent to that, they said, stop doing the thing that at least helped you to some degree in that game and don't do it in this final game against the Bengals. That's demoralizing because it just shows they continue to be totally backwards on the coaching staff front. If you want to look at it as it's not really Arthur Smith, it's Mike Tomlin, that just continues to suggest that the guy at the very top of the mountain has retrograde ideas on how to play winning football anymore in 2025. And then if you want to take the third angle, the one you mentioned where Gerry goes right into there's all this discord between all these power brokers in the organization and the quarterback. Oh, by the way, this is what it would take to get him to come back potentially. Then it just seems like they're spinning their wheels and like they're rudderless. You know what I mean? They're directionless. Hey, we had a huge falling out between the coordinator and maybe the head coach and the quarterback, but we haven't shut the door on him returning. Well, then what the hell's going on? This is the kind of stuff you would reserve typically for the Browns or for the Vegas Raiders. Like this sort of weird, inscrutable kind of dysfunction that you can't really wrap your head fully around.
And then there's the defensive dysfunction too, of guys not being on the same page and then pointing the fingers at each other, and then the lack of effort in the final game. I mean, all of this is mounting evidence that over the last month, one of the reasons why they lost was not just their scheduling and who they had to play. They just appear to have been a horribly coached team.
The effort was lacking at various points in time. The structure of what they were trying to do was completely disorganized.
Exactly.
Guys on the defense are yelling at each other, and Tomlin is left to throw one of the feeblest explanations out there. When they yell at each other, it means they care. Hey, Mike, I'd rather they not yell at each other because it means they care and they know what they're supposed to be doing.
I also want to say, like, thinking about Russell Wilson here, who's won a Super Bowl and probably will end up in the Hall of Fame, and has a very high opinion of himself as far as like the type of player he is. Still believes that he can win Super Bowls and play until he's in his mid-40s. If this is true and they grounded him after that Bengals game and he was forced to play in an ultra-conservative offense that didn't work, they didn't win, and ultimately he could look back on it and say, see, look what you guys did. I wanted to do it my way. I did it your way because you're the bosses, and look at how it ended. We lost 5 games in a row. We played the same team a second time, and you didn't trust me to go out there and make plays against them.
We didn't even score half the points we did the first time.
Why would he want to come back here then?